Joining us now on the Oakland County MegaCast is going to be State Senator Rosemary Bayer with the 12th District. Thank you for being with us here on the MegaCast.
Thank you for having me.
As someone who is an elected leader, what was going through your mind when you watched the video and that live feed that was coming out of our nation's capital?
It was horrific, like any citizen, right? Like everyone else in this country, watching the insurrection, watching people literally attacking our government. This is our government. This is our democracy, and they attacked us. I went from fury to crying, and back and forth. It was just horrific.
I heard someone say, "How can you love America?" which so many of these protesters and rioters claim to do, but yet attack our democracy at the same time.
It's hard to imagine how someone can get there. It's happened in history where people have aligned themselves with autocratic, dictatorish leaders and done things that were simply horrifying. And that's what I see going on. This is what's defined as sedition or treason, where you attack your own government, right?
So can we talk a little bit, what is actually going on in Lansing right now? Has the Capitol been given the all clear?
Yeah, I think we just got the all clear just a few minutes ago. Yeah, but I would say that we're all pretty darn on edge right now. And I know I sent the message to my staff. We don't have session today, thankfully. I just said, stay away, stay home, don't go anywhere near the city, don't go near the Capitol. Our offices are right across the street from the Capitol. So it's, in fact, I was followed out of my office once by a person carrying a very large rifle as I walked to my car. So I just told him to stay home.
It's like, where do we start? Where do we go from here? But because I will say, as someone who had worked with a law enforcement agency as well, even though I was in the citizen capacity, I was surprised that they were able to pull this off. But on top of that, we've gone through similar situations here in the state of Michigan where they did not storm our state capitol. However, there have been numerous rallies and protests.
They almost
with long
did.
Guns.
Right, they almost did storm it, in the sense that day that they had the biggest rally last summer, they came into the Capitol in such numbers that no one could actually move. We couldn't hear ourselves think because the noise was so high. They let them up into the balcony. And this was the pictures that some people saw, with them standing there with AR-15s in the balcony where we were below. It felt like we were in a fishbowl. And it turned out later that those were the very people who had created the plot to do two things. One, come in and shoot us, and two, go and kidnap the governor and drop her in the middle of the lake. So they were practicing. That day was a practice for the day they came back and actually shot the guns. So.
And so when you saw this yesterday, were you thinking this could happen where I work every day as well? Or because I feel like they should have learned from what was going on in Michigan.
I would think they should have learned what goes on in Michigan. And this one, it's true. And in one sense, we're not accustomed to terrorists from within our own country attacking our own government, right? We're not accustomed to that. This is not the Middle East. This is the United States. We don't do this kind of thing, right? So on the one hand, there's that. On the other hand, this has happened in Michigan, and it wasn't that long ago, and we certainly should have learned in this circumstance, even in the morning, as the rally was happening at the White House, and he was literally telling them to go to the Capitol and fight. They didn't still call people and bolster their force right then on the spot. I mean, they must have had people over there listening to those speeches and to that rally. So it's disappointing, or it's suspicious. The other part is, what a double standard we have, right? All of those white terrorists led into the Capitol with very large guns, no stopping any of them. If they were not white, there is no way this would have gone the same way it did, right? Yeah.
And that really is a kind of a conversation that is going to be fleshed out in the coming days. But we do know that people have been shot. The one lady who was shot, she was actually a veteran, and she died. And granted, she was doing something she shouldn't have been doing, but she believed in the cause and believed in this movement per se. Do you think that the president incited this and there should be criminal charges?
I do. There are multiple reports of the rally and what he told those people to do. When he said to go to the Capitol and fight, that is the definition of sedition. And betraying your government is actually treason, right? So those two things, those charges, he should not only be taken out of the presidency immediately, he should be locked up and held accountable to those charges. And the people that did it are treason. I mean, that's,
And you just mentioned there, he should be taken out of office. So there is conversation right now about trying to invoke the 25th Amendment. There are other lawmakers that are trying to say, let's impeach him. We're talking about 13 days.
I know, impeachment's not
What
going to help.
is exactly? Impeachment is too long of a process. It's not going to get the job done. So is the 25th Amendment a viable pathway right now?
When you look at what he did in one day, and there's still, 13 more days to go? Yeah, I absolutely think we need to take action when that is what we should do.
So with someone who is an elected leader, you are a Democrat as well. How safe do you feel right now?
Not terribly, to be honest. And the numbers of people that called yesterday, that called and wrote, and are you safe? It's like, I'm not in Washington. I know, but still, are you safe? No, I don't. And we have already had a lot of conversation within our caucus in the Senate talking about when we go back to work, right? I actually think we need to have stronger protections than the sergeants. We have a group of Capitol sergeants who are wonderful, but just like the ones who are in the US Capitol, they do not have the capacity to stand up to what happened or what even could have happened last summer when they were there, the rioters, the protesters, sorry. The other thing we need is some other additional, like no visitor policy until this stuff blows over. Maybe the National Guard, some way they're talking. We actually, many of us, I have a bulletproof vest. A lot of us do now since last summer. But when you look at the pictures of those guys, they were standing above us. And I keep saying, where do I get a helmet? I need a bulletproof helmet. I don't trust that this is going to be adequate. I really don't feel safe. I'm not the only one.
And so with that, how does that impact the job that you're doing?
Well, it adds a level of emotion and fury to everything. And so actually, it's interesting personally, starting a new session, right? This is our 101st legislative session. It's an important thing. It's an important date for us. So we've talked about what should our first legislation that we introduce be, how do we present ourselves to the people that we work for as we start this new session. And I'm so focused on education. I'm so focused on the environment, thinking about water justice. Maybe we should do something like that as our first bill. Now I think it's going to be the guns in the Capitol bill that we introduced last session. We have to reintroduce that. We'll do that again. Senator Polhanke and I have 2 bills for that package. We're going to introduce that right away and push really hard. We've never been able to get them to have a hearing on any kind of gun violence bills, let alone those. So they're going to get a lot more pressure this time.
But do you think, just like we saw yesterday, with on the nation's capital, where some of the people that are elected leaders that weren't for certifying the electoral vote switched their vote because they're seeing the direct attack on democracy? That's what a lot of people are saying this was. So do you think now that the rhetoric is going to change and the mindset's going to change even here in Lansing in the state of Michigan to help you get some of these bills and these measures passed?
So that's our goal, right? We really just want to get things done. Most of us, people like me especially, I went there, I'm an engineer to fix stuff, right? I didn't get there to do this. And what's interesting, there were 11 Republicans in the Senate who signed a letter, I don't know if you saw that, encouraging Congress to oppose the certification of the electoral vote, right? 11 of them, which I found highly offensive and highly incorrect, right? This is the will of the people. This is how people voted, and they're still doing this. They're still maintaining this line. Well, already one of them has issued a statement, I think it was in the Free Press, saying, I disavow any of this. This kind of violence is, they were attacking our democracy. They're saying a lot of the right words today, but they were also out there coordinating, what's the word, with the protesters in our lawn with their guns, and actually up in the balcony talking with them, the same people, the same senators. I mean, they are part of that community. They're part of the people that lied continuously about the election and driving the fury amongst that group of protesters around the elections, telling people that it was false, telling people that there was cheating, when lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit said no fraud, no cheating, state after state, court after court, all the way up to the Supreme Court. There is no evidence, and yet they continue to say, just like the president, that there was fraud and that we need to fight back against this. The election was stolen. It's flat out not true, and our senators knew that and continued to incite this kind of protesting and rioting.
So in knowing that, a couple of questions for you, because as you mentioned, you're also an engineer, you're an IT person, you're about fixing the problems. Do you think there is parts of our election process that is broken that does need to be further explored so that there are issues that can be fixed?
Yeah, I wrote down 3 specific things, and we actually, as we were planning our year, 3 specific things that we should fix as soon as possible, so we don't run into timelines and stuff when elections start up. One of them is to give more support to the clerks and allow them to process absentee ballots earlier. I mean, that was part of the issue that day, right? And the president kept saying, well, I was winning, and then all of a sudden I was losing. Clearly you're cheating. Well, the fact is those ballots had been in for a long time. If we could have processed them earlier, then there wouldn't have been this long lag to getting those ballots up and in the count, right? So you wouldn't see this imbalance at the end of the night. So we should fix that. We should fix the other ways that make it simpler for people to vote. I have a lot of seniors. We have Pontiac is in the center of my community, and I adore Pontiac, and I adore the senior communities, and a lot of them are accustomed to getting help voting. They get rides to the polls on buses. They get all that stuff was taken away. We actually set up with Pontiac, the clerk was wonderful there. He took a mobile polling station for the whole week before the election and did absentee ballot, or collected their ballots, gave them ballots, let them vote on site for senior locations, senior housing, the homeless shelters around the Pontiac, and just really tried to reach out to people who normally get more support. So we need to fix that. The ballot boxes, make sure there's no non-official ballot collection boxes or drop boxes, right? So things like that we need to fix. Those are the places that we saw things that didn't work right. The other part of it was the election itself, the most votes ever in the history of this country. And no errors, no fraud, everything is amazing how well it went. And the fact that we could count that many votes within a few days is incredible. So a little bit of extra support for the teams, for the clerks and the people that work at the different polling locations. That's all we really need to do. We're doing a great job. We already protect really, really, really well.
For those just joining us here on the Oakland County MegaCast, we are speaking with State Senator Rosemary Bayer of the 12th District. And with that, you touched on some of your other fellow elected leaders and on the Republican side. How do you think this is going to change the dynamics of working together going forward in 2021?
Well, I would say that my hope is that, they will take this more seriously. I think a lot of the people that were trying to, incite more of this kind of protesting and the continuation of something that they knew very well was not true. Literally lying to keep people riled up, right? I think that what happened yesterday has got to have an impact on how they feel about their own behavior, whether they ever say it out loud or not, that they went too far. that this is our democracy. This is for our people, and we cannot take it apart. So I think it will, I hope it will get better. And, we'll settle into something that is more reasonable, more like it. We always will have our differences, but we used to be able to talk. Let's do that again.
But I have to, before we let you go, if I can go ahead and ask you the question. Obviously, there was a recent issue between you and members of your staff and the FBI.
Okay.
Has it changed, or what are your feelings? Can you, for those not familiar with the topic, tell us what you went through.
Okay. Yes. So we use Zoom often for our staff meetings. We don't have any in-person staff meetings anymore. Those are very confidential meetings, but we have to do them online. We had one day, 10 days after a specific staff meeting, my chief of staff was woken up with the FBI pounding on her door. And as they talked to her, it turned out they had heard of a conversation on a specific day at a specific time, which was that staff meeting, where she was talking about tear gas and elections. So as that was true in that staff meeting, I have a bill that I've drafted about prohibiting tear gas for police use. And we talked about that bill in that meeting. We talked about all the bills that we have not introduced yet. We kind of run through them every meeting toward the end of the year to figure out, is this the right time? So we would be talking about, should we introduce that tear gas bill, or should we drop the tear gas bill before the election or wait till after? So in the whole context of a legislation, of course, that makes perfectly good sense. The person who overheard that or was told about that conversation in our meeting didn't know legislative work, didn't understand that. It reported to the FBI that there's this terrorist thing going on and they're going to drop tear gas at an election, at the election. So the FBI goes and pounds on Katie's door. So the problem is they waited 10 days to do that. First of all, she was highly terrified, actually. I was going to say intimidated, but terrified is a better word. When you got pounding on your door, and they were aggressively questioning her for about 10 minutes about this tear gas thing and what does that mean and where is it and why. And she's telling me this probably right after they left. And I said, why didn't they know who you were? They had 10 days to learn who she was. And they could have seen, the first thing you find when you search her name in Google is that she's my chief of staff. So they took 10 days. They didn't uncover that particular fact. And I asked the FBI about that, particularly on 10 days. Why did you wait till right before the election if you were worried about a tear gas attack of some sort? Well, we didn't really think it was that credible. I said, okay, so it wasn't that credible. Why didn't you just call me then? Why would you terrify someone who is still frightened? And my whole staff, every single time we talk now, we worry about what we say and who's going to hear it and who's going to misinterpret that. It was just really poorly done in every way, which, some people have said, is that what happened at the Capitol? Are they just, not doing a good job? I think they were definitely overloaded in work there before the election, but still, if you think it's not credible, call me. Ask what happened.
So when I read this article and I first saw it, I had so many questions, but I do want to know, because it's the same thing in some of the issues that you raised as well, as how did they get this information, which makes me to wonder, is someone in your team, is there a wiretap that's going on? Is there an investigation outside?
I'm IT, right? So my first assumption was, oh my God, they are listening in, right? They're trapping. There's a term called data mining, if you've heard of that, big data. So the telecoms collect all this huge data on everything that goes on. They can mine that data and look for keywords like drop tear gas and election within one small span of time, and that could raise a flag, right? It's illegal for them to do that and to come to Katie's house and ask about it. But I thought that was a good chance that was what happened. But all right from the start, Katie said, there was a repairman in my house. I don't think he could have heard me. He was in another part of the house. The door was closed. So in the end, the FBI did tell us that it was a person who made a report. So he said repeatedly to me, because I had engaged some of my former colleagues because I worked in identity management. He said, I will tell you, it had nothing to do with electronic surveillance. We did not use electronic surveillance in this case. So we're going with that. We're going with, okay, you waited 10 days then to, for something that you thought was so important, you had to pound on somebody's door at 7:30 in the morning, right? Why did you wait till right before the election if it was such a big deal? And if not, why didn't you just call me? So in the end, he did agree to look at their alternatives for how to handle things like this. And we're going to talk again. So maybe we'll get a chance to make their behavior better. But I know it was driving me crazy. And I don't know how you make people recover from that. How do you get over this thing that happens? Katie told me yesterday she had a niece staying at her house and she told her, don't answer the door, turn on the alarm, just stay back there where nobody can see you. I mean, what a thing to have to think about that, Not good, not fair.
It's not good. It really isn't. With that, State Senator Rosemary Bayer, we always appreciate your time and we appreciate your time as well. And I know that these are tense times and it really is a sad time for our democracy when we're thinking that our elected leaders need to wear a bulletproof vest or even to have one.
Yeah,
but I will say as a journalist, I had one. My husband provided it to me. And
Did you have a helmet?
And I did not have a helmet, but I will say since I did work for ATF. And so I was their public information officer. So I had access to such equipment, but of course I was a civilian. But it's just really sad that that's what's needed for our elected leaders in today's day and age.
Yeah, it is. I hope it gets better soon. That's what we got to work toward, right? We're going to fix it.
And where do we go from here?
From here, we have talking to do. We have some bridges to heal and build. And we've got to find a way back to where we are working together for the people of this country. That's what we have to do.
And one of the things we do want to point out is just like all of the protests that happened earlier this year across the country with the Black Lives Movement, we need to also understand that there are a lot of protesters out there, a majority of the protesters and the people that attended the rally that were not violent, that were not a part of this, and their message is being lost. And so we need to recognize that as well. And like you said, open up the dialogue, because closing down the dialogue does not help our situation as Americans.
Yeah,
we've
had multiple parties forever. We've got to learn how to live together again and how to get the work done. I mean, we can't let this stop our country from moving forward and taking the care and doing the right things for the people. We just have to get back to that.
Well, we so appreciate your time here with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. Stay safe. I'm glad that you and everyone there in Lansing, they've been given the all clear at the Lansing State, at the Capitol there in Lansing. They have been given the all clear. Everything is safe, but you could imagine some tense moments for members of our elected population.